My Econ 101 group at Kalamazoo College is doing a video presentation addressing how average income affects the cost of living in cities through an economic standpoint.
Our research question was, what are the main factors that drive costs of living in big cities such as Kalamazoo, Chicago, and Detroit? The objectives of this project are to examine the various impacts that the various cities' costs of living have upon students. This way, students and potential students can see what they are signing up for beyond schooling at their academic institutions. The purpose of this project was to provide a deeper understanding of how much it really costs to live in certain areas. We also wanted to gain insight via residents of these areas into what it's really like.
First, can we start with you telling us about yourself, where you were born, where you were raised?
Hello, my name is Shay, and I am a senior at Kalamazoo College.
I'm Tamara Morrison. I'm in my fourth year at K, English major, Black Studies.
My name is Nicole Gorder.
For the most part of my life, I grew up on the south side of Chicago, Illinois. And after I graduated from high school, I came to Kalamazoo, Michigan.
And I'm from Detroit, Michigan, born and raised.
I live in Chicago, Illinois. I was born and raised in a neighborhood in Chicago, not like fake Chicago, but it's split up into neighborhoods. So I live in Edison Park, which is on the northwest side of Chicago.
I work in the fast food industry and I work in the teaching.
I work in higher education because I'm a student worker. I work at the Writing Center as a peer consultant. I work at the Center for International Programs as a peer advisor, and I work at the Arkin Center for Social Justice Leadership as the Praxis Associate.
I work as a pool attendant at a pool, but my parents both work for the city. They work for Chicago Public Schools, so.
Two of these students work multiple jobs in order to pay off their rent. This shows just exactly how expensive Kalamazoo can be for a student who is trying their best to simply get by.
Well, it's on average 3 to 4 weeks in a month. I spend about $20 on gas. So about $80 to $100 a month on gasoline.
I do not have a car at the moment, so most of the time I'm either walking or Ubering, and I probably spend, for Ubers, I've been doing good, so probably like no more than $30 a month.
Like I said, gas the last time I was there costed $3.99, and there are 4 drivers in my family. So when we're constantly making trips back and forth, either to school, to jobs, or to get groceries, things like that, like it does add up. And public transportation like the bus and the train also costs, like $7 a day. So a month, it does add up. I couldn't tell you how much, but definitely over $100 on like gas and things like that.
While transportation costs are much higher in Chicago than in Kalamazoo, in Detroit they're much lower than in Kalamazoo. So if you have a lot of transportation costs, it might be better to live in Detroit than in Kalamazoo.
I live by myself in a one-bedroom apartment. I have no roommates, just me. On utilities, I probably pay no more than $25.
Well, my utilities is included with my rent. I paid $350 for rent with utilities included.
Rent is also lower here in Kalamazoo than it is in Chicago, but our Detroit resident doesn't quite know. So if you're looking to move, Kalamazoo is definitely a better place than Chicago in terms of rent price, and uncertain in terms of Detroit.
On average per month, I try to spend no more than $125 on groceries.
But I recently got approved for the bridge card, so I get $194 a month for the bridge card.
So we actually have food stamps that help us like to get our groceries because there's so many of us and things are so expensive. Like it's very hard to live a manageable life if you don't have those kinds of things in the city. Like, they make it very difficult and don't really understand other situations going on.
Groceries and other costs deeply depend on how many people are within your household, how many you're providing for, and other taxes such as food tax, which exists in Chicago.
I'm not really comfortable. I would like to go higher, but I believe it'll take time to get where I would want to be.
It could be better. I mean, I work 3 jobs and I get paid every 2 weeks, but I pay rent as well, and my rent is as much as every of my paycheck. So it's not a lot of wiggle room space, because after I pay, I probably sometimes, I'm doing good because that's just, I'm good at budgeting, but if I was not good at budgeting, I would be living paycheck to paycheck.
The economic status of many people living in Kalamazoo is that they would like to make more money, but they know it'll take more time. So if you move to Kalamazoo, you'll be making more money than you do in Chicago. But in Chicago, you'll still want to better your economic standpoint, and the same goes for Detroit.
I believe my cost of living is very much different from my family back home in Chicago. Just because Chicago is a very, very expensive place to live due to rent being high, like the cost of food. We don't have food tax here in Michigan, so it's pretty lower. On average, I don't think you would find the rent amount that's here in Kalamazoo and Chicago, even in an apartment. So my cost of living is very much different than my family's, with food, housing, and gasoline. Like the cost of transportation there is much higher. If I had to take the bus there, it would be about $3. If I had to take the bus here, it's on average $2. So $1 difference there, and gasoline is much higher when I visit home. So yeah.
I think about this a lot. I think it seems like it's more expensive to live in Kalamazoo to me than it is to live in Detroit, but I think that's because I'm on my own, so I'm paying for everything, so it seems like it's more expensive. And also I feel like Detroit has a lot more local, there's more options, so you can always choose the cheaper option, versus here is not a lot to choose from. Especially in terms of fun things to do, for example, eating out. I can go to Coney Island, that's considered eating out, and get a 99-cent Coney dog and $2 chili cheese fries, and I got a whole meal for $3. But here, if I want to eat out, the option is something like Crow's Nest, which is $12, you know? So I know that's weird to say, but I don't know, I feel like Detroit, there's more options, so there's more, it's easier to have a lower cost of living if you want. And especially, I don't have a car now, but I used to have a car, and keeping up with my car here is way more expensive than it was in Detroit, just because one, Detroit is the motor city. It's just easier to take care of a car there because there's a lot of options. And two, I don't know, in terms of maintenance and whatnot, I don't have to go to what's that place called, Uncle Leo's or something, to get my oil change. I can go to a local auto repair shop to do that for a cheaper price.
Different cities, I would compare it to be higher because we do get charged taxing. We do get charged taxes for very little things, paper bags at grocery stores are taxed 7 cents. Our soda and alcoholic beverages taxes tend to be higher than smaller cities like Kalamazoo, and gas prices are also exceptionally high. I mean, last time I was home, they were $3.99 a gallon. So it's definitely on the higher end of taxing and living.
Kalamazoo is definitely cheaper than Chicago, but it's uncertain how it measures up to Detroit until we look at some statistics.
I believe that they play a role in Michigan just with the lower taxes and not having food taxes and making it more affordable for families to feed their families. I don't think the government makes it affordable just because of the high range of taxes. And like, if you do visit Chicago as a visiting place, like that's the first thing you say when you get your bill, like, oh my gosh, the taxes are really high, and like most people can't afford the high tax rate.
Well, I think the government tries to be hands off, which is not, I don't think the government should be hands off. I think that especially in terms of like jobs and salaries and benefits, specifically like benefits for sure, that there should be some type of regulation of that the government should be involved in. Hands off really just means that you don't care, and usually when people don't care it's because marginalized people or groups of people are being effed over.
Yeah, because Chicago's a really segregated neighborhood, or Chicago's a very segregated city too. So when looking at housing, it's very easy to see how the neighborhoods differ. Like I said, I live in a safer neighborhood, so it tends to cost more money. But things that the city could do is definitely take demographics into consideration when imposing all these taxes, especially on like things like gas and groceries and soda, like basically essentials that people need. Like we shouldn't be taxed for. Like even though it is a bigger city and they do need more income to like make things better, like public services such as the schools and transportation. Like I understand where they're coming from, but also keep in mind the people, because the city doesn't pay very good money to begin with. Yeah, so the taxing is kind of extreme, if you ask me. But also groceries, like my family, I live in a family of 7, so there are 7 people in our household. And since we do live in Chicago, I live in a very safe neighborhood of Chicago. So that tends to cost more money because of where I live. So that on top of the amount of people living in my house and everything, like income-wise, the city doesn't pay very good money.
The government plays a high role in determining costs of living. In Detroit, it's more expensive because the government doesn't care. And in Chicago, it's also more expensive, but this time because the government taxes a ton. If I wanted to move from Kalamazoo to Chicago, groceries would cost me 32% more, housing would cost me 185% more, and transport would cost me 29% more. If I wanted to move from Kalamazoo to Detroit, groceries would cost me 21% more, housing would cost me 76% more, and transport would cost me 11% more.